The world fades into stillness as you begin to drift. Stories that drift softly through time. Close your eyes and let your body begin to rest. The world outside can wait. The night is patient. The air is still. Here, in this quiet moment, there is nothing to do, nowhere to go and no one to be, except you, right here, breathing gently. Feel the weight of your day melting away, like sand slipping through your fingers. Each breath grows softer, slower, longer, like waves folding into the shore. You are safe. You are warm. You are held by the silence between heartbeats. There's a hush to everything now, a stillness that welcomes you. Your thoughts, once busy and bright, begin to loosen like threads untangling in slow motion. You can feel yourself drifting softly, tenderly, into the space between waking and dreaming. Imagine now a long river winding through time. The water glimmers faintly in the moonlight, not rushing, not pulling, just flowing, steady and quiet. The surface reflects centuries of stories, faces, and forgotten voices. As you float along, you pass through mist, through memory, through echoes of lives that once were. Each ripple whispers a fragment of history, gentle as the sound of a page turning. This river doesn't hurry, it carries you effortlessly. You see lanterns glowing on its banks, red, gold, faded white, flickering softly like sighs in the night. Somewhere in the distance, a bamboo flute hums a note that never ends. You don't have to follow it, just listen. Let it stretch time thin until it dissolves. The night folds over itself. You are floating through centuries now, across palaces and stone bridges, through streets of old Japan, over gardens of Rome, beneath silken roofs of ancient China. The air smells of ink, of candle smoke, of tea and rain. Each scent is a door opening gently into another world. There is no rush to arrive. Every place welcomes you with calm simplicity. A still courtyard, a quiet marketplace, a dimly lit tea room. You glide past laughter that once was, footsteps that faded long ago, and though you travel through ages, you never leave this moment. Your body remains still, resting, breathing safe, while your mind drifts across the timeless hush of history. These are not stories of war or noise. They are soft stories, the kind that linger like echoes. Stories about how people lived, moved, dressed, and dreamed beneath the same sky that watches over you now. Stories that drift softly through time, just like you, floating weightless in the gentle current of sleep. So let the night take you. Let your breath match the rhythm of this journey. Inhale, exhale, drift, and fall. You are not leaving anything behind, only stepping quietly into a softer world where memories hum like lullabies, and the past is only a heartbeat away. This is your moment to rest, to listen, and to dream inside history's quiet river. As you float on this gentle current of time, the mist begins to part. Shapes emerge, not sharp or bright, but soft and shimmering, like candlelight seen through thin silk. You begin to see lives unfolding quietly along the river's edge, small stories almost forgotten, carried here by the centuries. One shore belongs to an ancient empire, where young boys once learned the delicate rituals of service in the grand houses of Qing China. Their laughter, once faint, still lingers in the corridors, mixing with the scent of incense and faint music played on old strings. A little further down, the river passes marble villas of Rome. Draped in white stola and flowing pallor, women of the empire move with grace, their voices calm, their gestures deliberate. The sound of their footsteps echoes between the pillars, timeless, serene. Beyond that lies a land of snow and silence, Edo, Japan. Lanterns sway gently over narrow streets where quiet figures walk under the pale winter sky. Among them, samurai without masters wait patiently for the night to pass, while in another quarter the soft glow of Yoshiwara dances upon the walls. And through it all, the river continues, carrying you deeper into stories that once lived and still breathe softly beneath the surface of time. The quiet lives of the brothel boys in the Qing Dynasty. Some stories don't rush to be told. They arrive slowly, like the tide, gentle, constant, inevitable. Tonight, as you lie back and let the world fade to a soft hum, let this one come to you. Let it settle over you like silk, weightless and cool. Feel the air soften. Let your breath fall into rhythm. Slow, even, calm. You are safe here. You are floating through time. The river of history winds beneath you, carrying faint lights and the sound of distant flutes. Mist curls above the water like smoke from forgotten incense. Through the haze, a landscape appears, Jiangnan, the watery south of ancient China. The air is warm, scented faintly of lotus and rain. Wooden boats drift through narrow canals, their reflections trembling under lantern light. Along the banks, low houses lean close to the water, their rooftops slick with dew. Inside one of these homes, a small boy is waking. The room is quiet except for the murmur of his parents' voices and the creak of the floorboards. He doesn't know that today he will leave. Outside, a man waits with a carriage. He has kind eyes, but his hands count silver coins with practiced ease. The boy's mother ties his belt, straightens his collar, and avoids his gaze. There are no harsh words, no tears, only the stillness that comes when something too heavy cannot be spoken. Soon the house grows smaller behind him. The boat pushes off, its oar dipping in and out of the river, steady as a heartbeat. The boy watches the water widen, the ripples spreading and fading. He doesn't cry. The world moves too slowly for tears here. He simply listens to the rhythm of the river, to the low call of a fisherman far away. The journey feels endless, yet soft, as if time itself has fallen half asleep. When he arrives, the air smells of incense and powdered sandalwood. The house is large, bright, filled with color. Women in flowing robes move quietly through the halls. Laughter echoes faintly, mixed with the sound of strings being tuned. Somewhere, a curtain sways. Someone calls his new name. He will learn many things in this place: how to bow, how to pour tea, how to smile without showing too much of his heart. Days melt into weeks, weeks into seasons. Morning comes with soft chimes, evening with the glow of oil lamps. The boy's hands become graceful, his voice grows calm. He learns to read poems aloud, to walk as if on air, to play the pipa until the notes sound like rain. The masters are strict, but not unkind. Everything here is about control, poise, stillness. Every gesture a ripple that must never break. Sometimes, when the night deepens and the lamps burn low, he lies awake, watching the shadows tremble on the ceiling. Beyond the walls, the city hums like a distant dream. He wonders if the river outside his village still flows, if the reeds still whisper when the wind passes. Then he closes his eyes and the thought drifts away, replaced by music, by laughter, by the endless rhythm of training. Years pass quietly. Faces change, seasons turn. The boy becomes part of the house, like a vase on a shelf or the pattern in the wood. He learns that silence is safer than longing. When guests arrive, he greets them with a smile that never falters. His gestures are perfect. His words, precise. To them he is elegant, polished, untroubled. Beneath the surface, the river still moves, slow and unseen. And yet, there are moments, tiny, fleeting, when something softer breaks through. A pause in a song. A lantern flickering too early. A breath drawn too deep. In those moments, he remembers the scent of river reeds, the sound of his mother's hands wringing cloth, the faint warmth of sunlight through thin curtains. It feels far away but not gone. Just sleeping. Eventually, he grows older and another child arrives to take his place. There is no ceremony, no farewell. He simply fades into the rhythm of the city, another shadow moving among shadows. His name, once new, becomes a whisper no one repeats. The house goes on, bright as ever. The music never stops. But the river remembers. It carries every reflection, every voice, every forgotten song. If you listen closely, you can still hear it. The soft hum of time, the sigh of lanterns, the quiet lives that once glimmered and disappeared beneath the surface. And as you drift deeper into sleep, you drift with them, weightless, timeless, free, floating through the calm current of the past, where history breathes softly and dreams never end. Beneath the lantern light, the gentle art of becoming. There is a hush that falls when history begins to whisper. Not through grand wars or thrones of power, but through the quiet lives that move like silk in the shadows. Tonight, let yourself drift there. Let your body grow heavy, your breathing slow. The night stretches wide and time becomes soft. You are safe, you are calm, and the world outside has already begun to fade. Now listen as a story unfolds, one that hums low beneath the lantern light of the Qing Dynasty, a story about transformation, grace, and the art of becoming. Inside the brothel houses of old Jiangnan, there is a scent of warm sandalwood and fresh linen. The air glows faintly golden, lit by oil lamps swaying gently on wooden beams. A boy stands quietly by the doorway, his hair still damp from the bath. Someone ties a sash around his waist, adjusts the collar of his robe, and murmurs a new name. His old one drifts away like a leaf on water, carried somewhere unseen. It is not taken from him violently. It simply dissolves slowly, naturally, as though it had never existed at all. This new name feels unfamiliar on his tongue, but there is no rush to learn it. Everything here moves with patience. He is shown how to walk with small, measured steps, to bow just deeply enough, to lower his eyes without looking afraid. He learns to pour tea in silence, to lift the teapot with two hands, and let the amber stream fall smoothly into porcelain. He learns that the space between each movement matters as much as the movement itself. In another room, music lingers in the air. Someone is playing the pipa, the notes trembling softly like raindrops sliding down bamboo leaves. The boy watches, listens, breathes. Soon he will be taught to pluck those same strings, to let sound bloom under his fingertips. But first, he must learn stillness, the quiet discipline beneath every art. Each day begins before sunrise when mist still floats above the canals. Each evening ends with the sound of laughter fading behind paper screens. And between those hours, he repeats the same rituals again and again, until his body remembers what his mind no longer needs to think. He practices smiling, not too wide, not too faint. He practices how to speak in a voice that feels like a whisper carried by the wind. He learns poems about moonlight, verses about willows, the kind of words that make guests sigh into their cups. He learns that laughter should sound light, never sharp, that his gaze should meet another's only for a breath, then drift away like mist. The women in the house guide him gently. They correct the tilt of his wrist, the rhythm of his steps, the curve of his shoulders. There is no scolding, no shouting, only repetition, patient and endless, until grace itself becomes instinct. Outside, the world is loud and unrefined, but here, inside these walls, everything is measured, every sound soft, every motion quiet. The house is its own universe of balance and poise. Candles burn low, tea cools slowly, silk rustles faintly like breath against skin. To live here is to learn harmony, to let every gesture, every tone, every glance blend seamlessly into the flow of the room. Time in this place does not rush. It hums low and steady like the strings of a lute vibrating long after the last note has been played. The boy grows used to the rhythm. The morning light on polished floors, the scent of rice and rosewater, the echo of laughter at dusk. His reflection in the mirror becomes someone else, composed, graceful, almost serene. The boy he once was, barefoot, curious, wild, drifts away like a shadow at dawn. And yet, in the silence of late night, when all the guests have gone and the air is heavy with sleep, something lingers. He sits by the window, watching the paper lanterns sway in the breeze. Their light flickers softly, painting ripples of gold across his hands. He breathes in deeply. Somewhere far away, a river murmurs through the darkness. The same river that once carried him here. Its rhythm is slow, eternal, unchanged. He doesn't think of leaving. He doesn't think of staying. He simply exists. Between the glow of the lantern and the whisper of the wind, the life he leads is not one of noise or glory, but of quiet precision, of gestures so soft they nearly vanish. Yet in that softness there is something beautiful, something that hums beneath the stillness, like the faint memory of a song. And as you listen, let your thoughts become as gentle as his breath. Let your body loosen, your mind drift, your heartbeat find its rhythm in this world of muted sound and golden light. History, after all, is not always made in battlefields. Sometimes it is found right here, in the delicate movement of a hand pouring tea, in the faint smile of a child who has forgotten his name, and in the quiet grace of those who learn to live beautifully inside the silence. The night of lanterns, whispers beneath the silk light. Night falls gently over Jiangnan. The air, still warm from the day, cools into a soft haze of river mist. Along the canals, rows of red lanterns sway with the breeze, their glow rippling like liquid fire across the dark water. You can hear it, that tender hum of life as the city exhales. Boats drift lazily. The murmur of distant laughter dissolves into the wind. And inside one of the grand old pleasure houses, a single door slides open, revealing a world that seems to exist outside of time. The light here is soft, honey-colored, filtered through layers of silk. The air smells faintly of jasmine tea and sandalwood ash. The floor creaks under the weight of movement so delicate, it feels almost imagined. And within this world, somewhere between dream and ritual, stand the brothel boys of the Qing Dynasty, poised in silence, their faces lit by the glow of paper lanterns. They move slowly, gracefully, every gesture practiced to perfection. A bow, a smile, a quiet offering of a cup. The sound of a peeper trembles from the next room, its strings vibrating like the wings of a moth. Guests sit cross-legged on embroidered cushions, scholars with tired eyes, merchants smelling faintly of spice and ink, officials speaking in tones just above a whisper. The boys attend to them with care, not hurried, not hesitant, but precise, as if every moment here has been rehearsed for centuries. There is laughter, but it is soft. The clinking of porcelain cups, the hush of silk sleeves brushing against wood, the faint breath of wind that makes the lanterns sway. Outside, the city keeps moving, horses clatter on stone, vendors call out, the river sighs. But in here, time has slowed to a pulse barely alive. The rhythm of the room is unbroken, steady, like the heartbeat of a dream. Every detail matters. The angle of the wrist when pouring tea, the way the eyes lower just enough to show humility without fear. A misplaced word, a glance too long, could unravel the illusion. So they move in perfect rhythm, their smiles light but never careless. They speak when spoken to, listen when the guests grow quiet. The art of this place is not pleasure alone. It is presence, the act of becoming invisible while remaining unforgettable. For the boys, the night stretches endlessly. When the laughter grows loud, they join it softly. When silence falls, they dissolve into it completely. They are shadows in silk, graceful and uncomplaining. Each carries the poise of a poet and the patience of a servant. Their world is candlelight and courtesy, where emotions are folded neatly and hidden behind lowered lashes. And when at last the guests rise to leave, the ritual reverses itself. Bowing again, the boys follow them to the door, the sound of footsteps fading across polished wood. The laughter fades first, then the music, then even the lingering scent of wine. One by one, the lanterns flicker lower, their light thinning to a dim red. And suddenly, the house feels enormous. An ocean of stillness between walls painted with shadows. The boys remain a while longer. They gather empty cups, fold the silk cloths, wipe the lacquered tables until they shine again. No one speaks. The quiet is not heavy. It is comforting, like a familiar blanket. The hum of the night outside seeps in through the open windows. The distant call of a night heron, the sigh of the wind pushing through bamboo. For the first time since sunset, they can breathe freely. In this silence, there is beauty. The kind of beauty that doesn't demand to be seen. The beauty of order, of stillness, of lives moving like slow water under moonlight. Each boy knows his place, his rhythm, his role. Yet for a moment, as the last candle burns down, there is a softness that belongs only to them. Someone hums a tune, a melody without words, one that drifts upward and fades before it reaches the rafters. And there, under the last, trembling light of the lanterns, time feels kind again. The boys sit together, resting their hands on their knees, their eyes half closed. The night holds them gently, like a mother holding a child who has forgotten how to dream. The silence deepens until even their breathing becomes part of it. Nothing moves. Nothing needs to. Outside, the world turns, but inside these quiet walls, everything is suspended. The music, the scent, the warmth. This is the secret life of night, the space between noise and sleep, between identity and illusion, where the past continues to breathe softly through silk and shadow. And as you listen, as your body grows heavy and your thoughts drift like the lanterns on the river, you become part of it too, floating slowly, peacefully, through the golden hush of history. The still house where time forgot to move. There is a kind of silence that belongs only to old houses, a silence that hums like a low note, neither empty nor alive, but suspended in a long, steady breath. When you step inside, you can almost feel it pressing softly against your skin like mist. The air is cool. The world outside fades to nothing. And within these quiet walls, time slows, folds, and finally forgets to move. This is where the chosen ones lived. The attendants to noblemen, young and precise, trained to exist as shadows of grace in a home where even the dust seemed arranged by ritual. The house is large, though not loud. Its hallways stretch endlessly beneath wooden beams carved with cloud patterns. Lanterns glow faintly against pale silk walls, their light wavering as if unsure whether to stay or sleep. The floors are polished so perfectly that footsteps do not echo. They glide, soft and formless, like wind slipping across water. Somewhere, a garden waits behind sliding doors. You can hear it breathe, the faint drip of a bamboo fountain, the chirp of a night cricket, the sigh of a single leaf falling. Here, every sound matters, every breath is measured. In this house of rank and stillness, movement is not merely action, it is ceremony. The boys who serve within these walls learn this quickly. They are taught not just how to pour tea, but how to move the wrist in a way that pleases the eye, not just how to bow, but how to make humility look effortless. They walk with steps light as falling ash, and when they speak, their voices hover just above a whisper, enough to exist but never enough to disturb. The noblemen they serve glide through the rooms like ghosts in fine robes. Their words come slow, drifting through the air like smoke from a stick of incense. They discuss poetry, paintings, or the color of clouds. Sometimes they say nothing at all, and the boys stand behind them, ready when needed, invisible when not. To outsiders, this might seem dull, an endless repetition of etiquette. But inside the stillness, there is something strangely soothing. The rhythm of the house becomes a kind of lullaby, the repetition a steady heartbeat of calm. The days blend together. Morning begins with the sound of sliding doors and the soft brushing of silk. Afternoons shimmer with light filtering through paper screens. Evenings arrive slowly, with the rustle of robes and the distant call of doves. Each day feels the same, yet somehow different, the way waves meet the shore in patterns both new and familiar. Time does not pass here, it drifts. The boys grow, yet remain the same. Their faces change, but their gestures stay perfect. Occasionally, one of them is called to read aloud, lines of ancient verse about rivers, mountains, or moonlight. His voice flows through the room like water through reeds, low and calm. The noblemen listen, their eyes half closed. The boy, though trembling inside, lets the words carry him. In that moment, he becomes part of something larger, not a servant, not a child, but a thread in a tapestry that stretches back through generations. When night comes, the lamps are dimmed one by one. The house exhales. The last echoes of the day fade into the wooden beams. In the garden, the moonlight spills over the pond, silver and still. The boys kneel to tidy the tea set, to fold the robes, to sweep the same floor that has already been swept 100 times. They do this not out of duty alone, but because the act itself brings peace, a quiet kind of meditation that asks for nothing, promises nothing, but offers rest to the hands that repeat it. Sometimes when everyone sleeps, one boy lingers in the corridor. He looks toward the moonlit garden where the bamboo shadows sway like gentle waves. He doesn't think of freedom or loss or time. He simply stands there, breathing. The night feels endless, but not in a lonely way. More like a river that never stops, slow and eternal. The air smells of pine and faint tea. Somewhere, A breeze stirs the chime hanging by the window, and its note rings soft, pure, and vanishes. The still house remains unchanged. Seasons come and go like passing clouds. Cherry blossoms fall on its roof in spring. Autumn leaves scatter across its stones. Inside, the boys move as they always have, calm, careful, constant. Years may pass, masters may change, but the rhythm stays the same. There is no beginning, there is no end. Only the quiet pulse of existence, beating softly beneath layers of silk and shadow. And as you listen now, as your breath slows and your body begins to rest, let yourself drift into that rhythm. Let your mind settle inside those walls where time stands still. Feel the calm expand through you, the tranquility of repetition, the peace of order, the sweetness of silence. You are safe here, in this still house of memory, where nothing rushes, nothing fades, and every moment lingers just long enough to whisper you gently into sleep. When the wind forgets their names. Night drifts gently across the old city, its narrow streets washed in the glow of fading lanterns. The air is cool, brushed with the scent of rain and wood smoke. Somewhere, a paper screen slides shut, and the last notes of a song vanish into silence. In a quiet corner of the world, beneath the weight of centuries, the story of the brothel boys of the Qing Dynasty folds softly into the dark, like silk being gathered in a careful hand. Their time has come and gone, leaving behind nothing but whispers, and the slow rhythm of the wind moving through the empty halls they once filled. They were once the shimmer beneath the candlelight, the poised, perfect hosts of a world built on grace and illusion. Boys taken from small river villages, taught to bow, to smile, to speak softly, to exist not for themselves, but for the eyes of others. Their laughter rehearsed, their elegance practiced, their youth, their beauty, their composure, all crafted into art, as if their very existence were a delicate performance. But like all art, it depended on time, and time, patient but merciless, moves on. One day, new faces appear, younger, smoother, brighter. The old ones step aside quietly without protest, without farewell. There are no announcements, no goodbyes, only a gentle shifting of space, a lantern dimming while another flares to life. No one remembers their names, no one notices their absence. The house continues as it always has, the same laughter, the same music, the same rituals repeated as though the world has never changed, and perhaps within those walls it truly hasn't. The replaced boys do not leave with bitterness. There is no room for that here. They leave like mist lifting at dawn, slow, silent, inevitable. Some vanish into the city's alleys, blending with the rhythm of the streets. Others disappear into the countryside where no one asks questions. A few are taken in by those who once called them servant or companion, kept not out of affection, but habit. And then there are those who simply fade, their stories dissolved into the hum of history, into the sound of the wind brushing against tiled roofs. What remains of them is softer than memory. A fold in the silk curtain, a teacup with a faint crack along its rim, the trace of perfume in an empty corridor. If you were to walk those streets now, centuries later, you might still feel them, not as ghosts, but as warmth lingering in the air. Their presence is not haunting, but calm, like the last ripples of a boat that has already passed. They lived not for glory, but for the brief beauty of existence, a life measured not in years, but in gestures. A poured cup, a practiced smile, a moment of laughter shared under candlelight. They learned the art of being forgotten gracefully, of disappearing without sound. It was not tragedy. It was rhythm, the way leaves fall when the wind changes, the way rivers flow without asking where they began. In that quiet acceptance, there was a kind of peace. Theirs was not a life of rebellion, but of surrender. To time, to age, to the natural turning of the world. The house that once echoed with their footsteps now stands empty, its wood darkened with age, its paper windows thin as breath. At night, when the wind moves through, the sound is soft and hollow, like a sigh. It carries something gentle in it, a whisper of names long gone, drifting between the rafters, across the courtyards, out into the city beyond. The people who once knew them are gone too. The streets have changed, the canals have silted, the language itself has shifted shape, yet the feeling remains, the tender ache of impermanence, the sweetness of things that do not last. History remembers emperors and battles, but the quiet lives, and the ones lived in candlelight and silence, they slip between the pages. Still they are there, in the spaces between words, in the hush between centuries, and if you listen closely, you can hear them. In the wind that slides through narrow alleys, in the hush that settles before dawn, in the soft rhythm of rain against old roofs. Their story is no longer a cry nor a song, only a murmur, low and endless, like the earth breathing. So now, as you close your eyes, imagine those streets again, the lanterns swaying, the moon caught on the river's skin. The faces you'll never see again, fading softly into the dark. Their story has ended, yes, but in its ending lies something beautiful, the gentlest kind of freedom, the peace of being carried away quietly by the current of time. Like a dream, floating on still water, their lives drift beyond memory, and finally, into rest. Fashion and the role of women in ancient Rome. The whisper of marble, women beneath the Roman sun. The morning light of ancient Rome was never in a hurry. It slid softly across the marble streets, pooling in the corners of courtyards and spilling gently through colonnades. The air shimmered with quiet warmth, carrying the scent of crushed herbs and distant fountains. In that tranquil glow, women moved like reflections in water, graceful, serene, deliberate. Their steps made no sound against the stone, their shadows long and elegant in the sun. This was their world, the calm pulse of the empire beneath golden skies, a world of fabric, fragrance, and silent power. Inside the marble villas, where the walls gleamed with frescoes and the air trembled with harp strings, women dressed slowly, almost ceremoniously. They wrapped themselves in stola, long flowing gowns that fell in perfect folds down to the floor. The cloth, often of fine linen or soft wool, caught the light like silk, glowing faintly against the skin. Each fold, each drape, seemed to carry meaning, virtue, dignity, grace. It was not just clothing, it was language, a language spoken in fabric and gesture, understood by all who lived under Rome's vast sky. Over the stola they drew the palla, a large, sweeping shawl that could be draped across the shoulders or pulled lightly over the head when walking outdoors. In its folds lay the art of modesty and mystery. As it moved with the breeze, it shimmered softly like a veil between the woman and the world. Every motion, a turn, a bow, a glance, felt unhurried, timeless, as if the very air slowed itself to match her rhythm. In the bustling streets beyond, life hummed, merchants calling, horses clattering, fountains singing their endless songs. Yet within the women's quarters, everything remained composed, measured, serene. Servants whispered, Sandals slid quietly across polished floors, and the scent of rose oil drifted like a sigh. Even time seemed softened here, wrapped in sunlight and stillness. The Roman woman's day unfolded not in haste, but in grace. She might sit in the atrium, weaving fine thread on a loom, while the light moved slowly across the marble floor. Or she might write letters on thin wax tablets, her stylus tracing gentle curves. Perhaps she would wander through her garden, where the leaves trembled under the touch of morning breeze, her pallor trailing behind her like a cloud of silk. In those moments, she was both figure and sculpture, alive yet carved from peace. Her hair was a marvel of patience and artistry, braided, coiled, and adorned with pins of gold or ivory. Each strand was placed with care, each curve of her bun a small testament to Roman precision. Some wore wigs made from hair brought across the empire. From Gaul, from Germania, strands woven into their own, blending the world into their beauty. The soft glint of pearls or coral framed their faces, catching the sunlight with quiet splendor. Nothing was rushed, nothing excessive. Beauty, to them, was discipline, a harmony between restraint and grace. When they walked through the forum or visited the baths, the city's gaze followed them, not in frenzy, but in awe. Their garments fluttered lightly, tracing the air as if drawing invisible patterns. The sound of fabric brushing against fabric was like the whisper of a secret being carried by the wind. Beneath the grandeur of empire, beneath the echo of soldiers' boots and the clamor of chariots, there was this other Rome, softer, slower, luminous. A Rome that lived not in conquest, but in the quiet poise of its women. As afternoon drifted into evening, the marble walls glowed pale gold, and the city's noise softened to a murmur. Women gathered on terraces, speaking in low voices, sipping wine infused with herbs. Their laughter, light and unhurried, floated into the air like the sound of water touching glass. Below them, Rome breathed, vast and eternal. But here, above the streets, time belonged to them. The fabric of their garments rustled gently in the breeze, their silhouettes framed against the setting sun, calm and enduring as statues. When night finally fell, the city dimmed to a warm hush. Oil lamps flickered, casting halos of amber across the marble floors. The women loosened their pallor, letting it fall softly across their shoulders. The day folded in on itself, as quiet as a closing petal. Somewhere, a lyre played a slow, wistful tune, a song without words, echoing through the cool corridors. And as the stars gathered above the sleeping empire, the women of Rome rested, wrapped in their stola and their dreams. They had lived their day not in noise, but in grace. Their beauty woven from patience, their strength from calm. The city outside may have marched toward history, but inside those marble walls the air held only stillness, the soft rustle of cloth, and the eternal rhythm of breath. So now, as you listen, breathe like they once did, slow, steady, serene. Let the quiet grandeur of ancient Rome surround you. Let the marble cool your thoughts and the whisper of fabric ease you into stillness. The world will wait. Tonight, only calm remains. The golden silence of Roman elegance. The air in ancient Rome was thick with warmth and fragrance, olive oil, crushed herbs, a hint of rosewater carried on the afternoon breeze. In the marble courtyards where fountains whispered and light spilled through open arches, women moved with quiet precision. Their footsteps made no sound against the stone. Their robes shimmered faintly, and when they passed, the air itself seemed to slow, as though it wished to linger near them a moment longer. This was not the noise of empire, of conquest or debate. This was the soft rhythm of grace, the art of being composed and serene beneath the endless Roman sun. Their beauty was deliberate, but never hurried. A Roman woman began her day surrounded by stillness and mirrors of polished bronze. The slaves brought oils and combs, trays of pins and ornaments, gold, ivory, pearl. A strand of hair was lifted, turned, coiled. Fingers moved deftly, weaving and pinning until the hair rose high above her head in a style both intricate and effortless. Some wore their hair plaited into spirals that curved like vines. Others shaped soft waves that framed the face before gathering at the crown. A few, those of wealth and rank, adorned themselves with wigs, luxuries brought from distant lands across the sea. The hair of foreign women, fair or chestnut or even red, became part of Rome's fashion, a silent thread connecting continents through beauty. In those days, style itself was a form of language. The higher the hair, the greater the status. The more complex the braid, the deeper the artistry. And yet, even beneath such ornament, there was peace. The motion of being prepared, the repetition of hands working gently through hair, became its own quiet ritual, a meditation that echoed through generations. When the hair was complete, pins were placed, some carved from ivory, others from gold twisted into spirals or tipped with pearls. They caught the morning light, scattering it softly across her shoulders. A final touch of perfume, a dab behind the ear, a breath of myrrh at the neck, and she was ready to step into the day. Her jewelry spoke as eloquently as her posture. Bracelets gleamed faintly against her wrists, layered in pairs or threes, each one chiming softly when she moved. Necklaces of gold and amber lay cool against her skin, and small earrings, shaped like drops of sunlight, swayed with every nod of her head. To a passerby, she was the image of refinement, but to those who understood, her adornments were symbols of lineage, of wealth, of influence in a world ruled by men. And yet there was nothing loud about her presence. Rome was a city of spectacle, of marble triumphs, roaring crowds, and banners raised to the sky. But she carried her elegance like silence carries breath. When she walked through the forum or along the garden peristyle, the stola around her body flowed in soft folds, her pallor drifting behind like a muted echo of color. Everything about her moved in harmony: hair, jewelry, fabric, gesture. She was not rushing through life, she was gliding through it, as though time itself had slowed to watch her pass. In the evenings, when the city began to dim, the scene shifted. The air cooled, lamps flickered within the villas, casting golden halos on the walls. Shadows trembled across mosaics of gods and goddesses. The women gathered in the atrium, reclining on couches, their jewels glowing faintly in the candlelight. Laughter rose softly, mingling with the notes of a lyre. Someone poured wine, its surface gleaming like melted ruby in the cup. Outside, the streets quieted, and the distant hum of Rome became a lullaby. The hairpins loosened, the curls began to fall. One by one, the adornments were set aside, the bracelets, the necklaces, the earrings, each resting upon marble trays like sleeping suns. The perfume lingered in the air, warm and faint. A servant brushed out the hair again, slow and rhythmic, until it fell like silk across her shoulders. It was a ritual of release, the undoing of elegance, as gentle and sacred as the dressing had been. And as the night deepened and the last lamp flickered low, she sat before her mirror and saw herself not as a symbol, but as a woman, soft, breathing, alive. Her reflection swayed in the lamplight, blurred and calm, like the moon floating on still water. In that moment, the world outside, the empire, the noise, the endless march of history, faded away. What remained was stillness, golden and infinite. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it now. The faint chime of her bracelets, the whisper of silk, the sigh of wind brushing marble. Time drifts like perfume through those corridors, carrying the grace of women who once lived so beautifully that even silence remembered them. So, close your eyes. Let that softness fill you. Imagine the warmth of candlelight, the scent of rose oil in the air, the sound of gold against skin. The city sleeps. The empire rests. And in the quiet heart of history, beauty breathes again, calm, timeless, eternal. The fragrance of stillness, beauty in the gardens of ancient Rome. The afternoon sun in ancient Rome did not blaze, it glowed, soft and golden, stretching over marble columns and olive trees, touching everything with warmth rather than fire. The air shimmered faintly, carrying the slow hum of fountains, the rustle of silk, and the scent of flowers that drifted lazily from the gardens. In that moment, the world was not rushing toward history or conquest. It was pausing, to breathe, to admire, to exist. And within that stillness, a Roman woman prepared herself like a work of art being completed in the light. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes time feel suspended. On a polished bronze table lay small jars and bowls. White powder, crimson pigment, black charcoal, and flasks of delicate perfume. The air was sweet, touched with myrrh and rose oil, with the faint sharpness of crushed herbs. Servants moved softly, their hands sure, their gestures practiced. The woman sat before a mirror, her reflection golden and calm, as though she were not preparing for the day, but for eternity. First came the white, fine powdered chalk or lead, brushed gently onto her face until her skin gleamed pale as marble. To the Romans, this was not disguise but transformation, the soft veil of perfection, an offering to beauty itself. Next, a touch of red, the color of life, the hue of fruit, of fire, of blood running quietly beneath the skin. Made from crushed berries or cinnabar, the pigment was dabbed onto her lips and cheeks, restoring warmth to the surface that the white had cooled. Then came the black, the kohl, drawn in fine, patient lines along the lashes, framing the eyes like poetry written in shadow. Each gesture was slow, deliberate, and graceful. The brush lifted, paused, and touched again. The rhythm of movement matched the rhythm of breath. There was no hurry. There never was. For beauty, in Rome, was not about haste. It was ceremony. It was a conversation between body and air, between the hand and the soul. When her face was done, she reached for the final act, perfume. It was kept in small glass bottles from Egypt, their surfaces shimmering with color like captured rainbows. Inside was the scent of jasmine, cinnamon, saffron, and honey, ingredients gathered from every corner of the empire. She dabbed a drop behind her ears, another at the base of her neck, and one upon her wrists. The fragrance rose into the air, mingling with the scent of the garden beyond her open window. The two became one, human and nature, body and breeze, merging in a single, delicate breath. Outside, the garden was alive in a slow, tranquil way. Olive branches shifted, casting gentle patterns on the marble floor. Bees moved lazily between flowers. The sound of water trickled from a fountain shaped like a nymph, her stone face smiling faintly through centuries of silence. A few other women walked among the hedges, their stola flowing like ripples of silk, their laughter light, unhurried. Everything in this world was measured, balanced, precise, a painting in motion, composed of sound, scent, and color. The woman rose from her seat, her pallor slipping softly across her shoulders. The fabric glowed faintly in the light, catching the golden air like water catches the sun. She stepped outside, barefoot for a moment, feeling the cool marble beneath her feet. The perfume followed her, wrapping the air in sweetness. The red of her lips, the black of her eyes, the white of her skin. Together they formed something timeless, something serene. In Rome, beauty was not vanity. It was harmony, an act of alignment with the order of the universe. The curve of a vase, the proportion of a temple, the flow of a river, all sought the same perfection as the arch of her brow, the fall of her hair, the line of her shoulders. Even her stillness was deliberate. To sit gracefully, to move with intention, to let silence speak. These were the marks of power. The poets wrote of it, the artists tried to capture it, but it could never truly be held. It lived in the air, in the brief shimmer between sunlight and shadow. As evening came, the light softened to amber. The garden quieted. The perfume, once vivid, mellowed into something faint, like memory. She sat beneath a fig tree, a scroll resting beside her, and watched as the breeze played with the folds of her gown. Somewhere, a flute began to play, slow and tender, its melody curling through the branches. The sound mingled with the scent of flowers and the faint sweetness of wine. It was then, in the hush between the last breath of day and the first sigh of night, that everything became one. The marble, the air, the color of her lips, the whisper of silk, the song of the flute. A perfect order, silent and complete. If you listen closely, you can still feel it. The calm of that world, the balance between beauty and peace. The faint fragrance of time, drifting gently through the centuries. So, breathe in slowly. Let the perfume of history wrap around you. Feel the rhythm of your heartbeat slow, your mind loosen, your body sink into the stillness. For just like her, you are part of that same harmony, soft, silent, timeless, resting in the glow of ancient light. The world fades, the air grows warm, and as you drift towards sleep, the scent of Rome lingers, quiet, eternal, and impossibly serene. The language of fabric. Calm elegance in the Roman world. The world of ancient Rome did not rush. It unfolded slowly, like sunlight spreading across marble courtyards, like a song whispered through stone arches. Beneath the hum of empire and the distant echo of marching legions, there existed another Rome, quieter, gentler, where beauty was a language and every fold of fabric carried meaning. Here, in this serene world of symmetry and stillness, women moved with a kind of quiet power, their garments speaking softly of grace, balance, and belonging. In the Roman world, clothing was never just about appearance. It was philosophy stitched into fabric, a reflection of order, stability, and dignity. When a woman wrapped herself in a stola, that long, flowing gown of fine wool or linen, she was not merely dressing her body, she was aligning herself with the harmony of the universe. The folds of her garment echoed the lines of temples, the sweep of aqueducts, the curve of marble statues. In her stillness, there was structure. In her elegance, there was peace. The stola fell from shoulder to ankle, heavy enough to flow, light enough to breathe. It moved like water, rippling with each quiet step. Over it, she drew the palla, a large shawl of gauze or silk that she could drape over her shoulders or lift to cover her head. The fabric itself became an extension of thought, modest, composed, unhurried. When she walked, the fabric whispered softly against stone floors, the sound blending with the rustle of leaves and the distant trickle of fountains. In a world ruled by men, Roman women learned to speak not through voice, but through presence. The tilt of a head, the way a stola was folded, the weight of a gold bracelet. These were words in a language older than writing. To wear one's garments with composure was to declare, I am part of order, not chaos. I am not loud, but I am seen. I am the stillness that holds the city together. The colors of their clothing were chosen carefully. Whites and creams for purity, soft yellows and rose hues for warmth, deep blues and violets for dignity. Each tone caught the sunlight differently, painting the marble halls with gentle shades. Their fabrics came from far lands, linen from Egypt, silk from the east, dyed wool from the ports of Tyre. Every thread told a story of distance and devotion, of hands that wove in rhythm with the beating of empire. And yet, for all its grandeur, Roman fashion carried a rare calm. It did not demand attention, it invited it. The beauty of the garments was not in ornament, but in balance. The stola was both clothing and meditation. It required care to wear, patience to fold, mindfulness to move within. The act of dressing itself became ritual. The slow unfurling of cloth, the gentle smoothing of edges, the wrapping and re-wrapping until everything lay just right. Imagine the scene. A woman stands before an open window. The morning air drifts in soft and cool. She adjusts the fall of her stola, ties the girdle around her waist, and drapes the palla over one shoulder. Outside, the city begins to stir. Footsteps echo in the streets, the smell of baked bread floats from the ovens, a distant lyre hums its first note of the day. But inside, all is still. She is centered. The world may turn with ambition and empire, but in this quiet space, order lives in her breath, her hands, her fabric. To see her walk through the atrium or the marketplace was to see a lesson in restraint. There was no rush, no fluttering chaos of motion. Her steps were measured, her gestures deliberate, her gaze calm. Even her silence carried shape. She existed as Rome itself existed, vast, enduring, complete. As the day waned and the sun melted into copper light, she would return home, her garments now carrying the scent of the city, olive oil, incense, dust, and sun. She would unfasten her stola, fold it carefully, and place it aside. The act of undressing was as sacred as that of dressing. Another ritual, another moment of harmony. The air around her grew quiet, filled only with the hush of evening and the faint flicker of oil lamps. Roman fashion at its heart was an art of stillness. It was the empire's quiet secret, that beneath its power and expansion lay a longing for peace, for symmetry, for the gentle beauty of things that do not shout but endure. The stola and palla were not weapons or statements, they were reminders that even in a world of conquest there must be softness, that elegance is a form of order, that true strength is silent. So now, as you listen, imagine the rhythm of her movements, the soft sweep of cloth, the echo of sandals across marble, the hush of her breath blending with the sigh of Rome at dusk. Let that calm settle into you. Breathe as she once did, slow, deliberate, balanced. Inhale the peace of ancient air. Exhale the weight of the modern world. The empire sleeps, the streets fade to gold, and you, wrapped in stillness, drift gently into that same quiet grace where time slows and everything, like her, simply, beautifully is. The story of the 47 Ronin. The winter of 47. Shadows, a tale from Edo. Winter came quietly to Edo in the year 1701. The city, wrapped in snow and silence, seemed to hold its breath beneath a pale sky. The air was thin and still, and from the tiled rooftops, snow fell in slow, deliberate spirals, each flake drifting like a forgotten promise. It was the season when time itself seemed to move slower, softer, as if the world were waiting for something that could not be named. In that calm, beneath the whispering snowfall, began the quietest story of all. The story of 47 Ronin, men without masters, and the stillness that carried them toward their fate. They had once served a proud lord, Asano Naganori, a man of dignity and youth whose temper burned too brightly in a world ruled by ritual. One spring day, inside the shogun's palace, words were exchanged, sharp and poisonous as blades. Humiliation followed, then anger. A sword was drawn when none should have been. For that act, the law demanded silence, and Asano was ordered to take his own life. His household was dissolved, his castle seized, and his samurai, once bound by loyalty, were left adrift. 47 men cast into the cold expanse of dishonor. In the months that followed, the snow became their companion. They scattered across Edo, taking humble work as laborers, merchants, and guards. Some lived above taverns, others in back rooms of tea houses, their swords hidden, their hearts heavy but quiet. They spoke little, smiled politely, and watched the seasons pass with the patience of stones. To the world, they seemed ordinary, but beneath that calm surface, their purpose burned steady, not as fire, but as a quiet ember that refused to die. Their leader, Oishi Kuranosuke, understood the art of waiting. He disguised his resolve behind indulgence, drinking, gambling, laughing loudly in the company of courtesans. It was an illusion woven so carefully that even those who once admired him believed he had abandoned honor altogether. Yet in truth, Oishi was listening, to whispers, to timing, to the slow rhythm of fate. His every gesture, his every silence was part of a plan unfolding as gently as snow across rooftops. 2 winters passed, the city forgot them, the world moved on, but in that forgetting, the Ronin found their moment. On a night thick with falling snow, when Edo lay asleep under a silver sky, 47 men gathered in the darkness. They wore black robes and straw cloaks, their faces calm, their movements quiet. They did not march, they flowed through narrow streets, across frozen bridges, toward the house of Kira Yoshinaka, the man whose insult had destroyed their lord. The snow muffled every sound, only the faint crunch beneath their sandals betrayed their passage. Lanterns swayed softly in the wind. Inside Kira's mansion, light flickered behind paper screens. Unaware, unprepared, the attack came swift, silent, precise. No screams filled the night, only the muted clash of steel against steel, the hiss of breath in cold air. When it was done, the Ronin stood together, their robes marked by snow and ash. They found Kira hiding in a storage room, trembling beneath the weight of his fear. Oishi bowed once, deeply, respectfully, before justice was done. When dawn rose, the city was hushed again. The Ronin did not flee. They walked through the streets in silence, carrying Kira's head to the temple where their master was buried. Snow clung to their shoulders like blessing or forgiveness. At the gate, they knelt, placed the head before Asano's grave, and bowed one final time. The air held its breath again, as if the world itself was moved by their stillness.
Their fate was already written. For defying the shogun's law, they were ordered to die, but permitted to die as samurai by their own hands, and so, one by one, they knelt again as calmly as they had lived, surrendering themselves to the same quiet that had guided them all along. There was no fear, no triumph, only peace, the kind that comes when all debts are settled, all words fulfilled.
Centuries have passed since that snowy night, but the story of the 47 Ronin still drifts softly through time, like snow over Edo. It is not a story of vengeance alone, nor of violence, but of patience, honor, and stillness. Of men who moved like shadows and vanished like them too. If you listen now, you can almost hear it. The whisper of snow brushing against tiled roofs, the soft clink of a sword returning to its sheath, the echo of footsteps fading down an empty street. The world turns, empires rise and fall, but the silence of those 47 men remains. Steady, eternal, serene. So close your eyes. Breathe in the cold air of Edo. Let the snow fall quietly in your mind. There is no rush, no noise, only the calm rhythm of loyalty and the peace that follows after all is done. The patience of shadows. Oishi and the silent years. Time moved differently for the 47 Ronin. In the heart of Edo, where life hummed in rhythm with the changing seasons, they lived as ghosts among the living. Men without names, drifting quietly through alleys and markets, their swords hidden, their hearts steady. The world had forgotten them. Yet beneath the quiet hum of the city, something waited. A slow, deliberate current of purpose that moved beneath still waters. At the center of this stillness was Oishi Kuranosuke. Once a samurai of high standing, he now lived simply, almost invisibly. He walked among the common folk, wearing plain clothes, speaking softly, never calling attention to himself. The proud lord's retainer had become an ordinary man. At least, that's what people believed. He rented a modest house, drank with the locals, laughed at the right moments. His hands poured sake. His eyes studied the world. Every day he waited, not for permission, not for fortune, but for time itself to fall into alignment. The Ronin had been scattered since their lord, Asano Naganori, was forced to take his own life. Some worked as craftsmen, some as merchants, others as guards or teachers. Each man, no matter how humble his task, carried the same quiet vow, that one day, when the snow returned and the wind was right, they would move again. Until then, patience was their blade and silence their shield. Oishi understood that revenge, to be complete, must be calm. The storm must build beneath still skies. So he let the world think he was broken. He drank in public, allowed gossip to spread that he had abandoned honor. He smiled faintly when people whispered. Even Kira Yoshinaka, the man who had humiliated their lord, began to believe that Oishi had surrendered his spirit. It was exactly as he intended. The seasons turned like slow pages in a book. Cherry blossoms fell, summers ripened, and autumn burned softly into winter again. In small moments, in hidden letters and quiet meetings, the Ronin planned. One man bought weapons, another studied the guards at Kira's estate. A few secured safe houses, places to hide their families. Nothing was rushed. Each action was placed with the care of a stone in a garden. Deliberate, enduring, part of a larger pattern unseen by the eye. Sometimes Oishi would walk through the streets of Edo at dusk. Lanterns glowed like floating stars. The air smelled faintly of cedar and smoke. Children laughed in courtyards, unaware of the calm figure passing by, a man who carried the weight of loyalty in his silence. He did not hate Kira. Hatred burns too fast. What he carried instead was devotion, the deep, steady kind that endures even when forgotten. Nearly 2 years passed in this still rhythm. The world changed, but the Ronin remained the same, constant, patient, invisible. When at last the time came, it did not arrive with thunder or fire, but with a soft snowfall. The air was quiet that evening. Oishi gathered his men beneath a low roof. The room was dim, lit by a single lantern. No speeches were given. No cries of vengeance filled the air. He simply looked at them, one by one, and nodded. That was enough. Outside, the snow fell softly, covering the streets in white. The cities slept. The Ronin moved like shadows through the falling flakes, their footsteps barely touching the earth. Each man carried the weight of 2 years of silence, each breath steady, each motion sure. They had waited long enough. Now, as they walked together through the night, they were not men of grief, but of peace, finally fulfilling the promise that had carried them through every quiet day and sleepless night. They reached Kira's mansion before dawn. The attack, when it came, was swift and quiet, a whisper of steel, a breath of wind through paper walls. The Ronin moved as one, their discipline honed by years of patience. They found Kira hiding, trembling, and Oishi stepped forward. His voice was calm, like a river that had at last reached the sea. He bowed once, and justice was done. When it was over, the snow had deepened. The Ronin stood outside, their robes dusted white, their swords resting in silence. No cheers, no triumph, only the soft sound of snow falling on the city that had forgotten them. They carried Kira's head through the sleeping streets, their steps light, their purpose complete. At the temple where Lord Asano was buried, they knelt as one. They placed the head before his grave and bowed deeply. There were no words, only stillness. The air itself seemed to pause, holding the weight of centuries in that quiet gesture. In that moment, everything was as it should be. 2 years of waiting had become eternity. The snow fell, the wind sighed, and the world, for just a heartbeat, was perfectly balanced. The story of Oishi and his 46 brothers is often told as one of vengeance, but listen closely, and you will hear something softer beneath it. The sound of patience, of silence turned into strength. It is the story of time itself, of how stillness can hold the sharpest edge. So as the snow drifts outside your own window tonight, breathe slowly. Imagine the quiet streets of Edo, the faint glow of lanterns, the footsteps that fade into eternity. Feel the calm of waiting, the beauty of purpose fulfilled. Let your thoughts settle like snow, your body sink into stillness. And as sleep comes, gentle, certain, like the falling of snow, remember Oishi, who waited 2 winters in silence and found peace at last. The night of 47, shadows, snow falling over Edo. It was the winter of 1703, and Edo slept beneath a heavy hush of snow. The city, usually alive with the clatter of wheels and the hum of merchants, was still, blanketed in white. Lanterns glowed faintly through the mist, and the air was crisp enough to make every breath visible. The night did not tremble, it rested, quiet and infinite. And along one narrow road, Under the silver gaze of the moon, 47 men walked together. Slow, steady, silent. Their footsteps left neat impressions in the snow, perfectly aligned, disappearing into the drifting wind behind them. They did not speak. The only sound was the faint rustle of their robes and the soft hiss of snow beneath straw sandals. In that still moment, time itself seemed to stop, as if the universe had paused to witness their passage. They were Ronin now, masterless samurai, once loyal retainers of Lord Asano Naganori, a man who had died by his own blade 2 years before. His death had not been of his choosing. It was forced upon him by law and by pride for drawing his sword inside the shogun's palace against the corrupt official Kira Yoshinaka. The empire called it justice. The men who walked beneath the falling snow called it unfinished. At their head was Oishi Kuranosuke, calm, quiet, and resolute. His face betrayed no emotion, but his eyes, steady and clear, carried the stillness of the moon itself. For nearly 2 years, Oishi had waited. He had worn the mask of a fallen man, wandering through taverns, feigning drunkenness, allowing the world to forget his name. All the while, his purpose remained fixed, his silence deepening like snow gathering on rooftops. Layer upon layer, until the time was right. Now the time had come. The Ronin moved through the outskirts of Edo like shadows made flesh. Every step was measured, every breath a vow fulfilled. They carried no banners, no drums, no cries for vengeance, only discipline, only calm. The mansion of Kira Yoshinaka stood at the end of a narrow lane, its gate closed, its guards warm inside, unaware of the quiet storm moving toward them. When the Ronin arrived, they did not hesitate. The gate fell first, struck cleanly. The silence of the city broke, but only gently, a whisper, not a roar. They entered the compound with precision, their movements smooth and deliberate. Torches flickered against the snow, sending shadows dancing across the walls. The guards roused from sleep, confused and frightened. The Ronin met them not with fury, but with control. Their blades gleamed, bright, cold, and efficient. Steel met steel, but the sound was brief, muted by snow. One by one the guards fell and the night grew quieter still. Inside the mansion, Kira hid, trembling, desperate, seeking shelter where none remained. The Ronin searched room by room, their footsteps soft, their breathing steady. The air smelled faintly of smoke, of pine, of winter. Then in a small storage room behind the garden, they found him. He was shaking beneath a pile of straw, his silk robe torn, his hands clutching the darkness. Oishi stepped forward. He bowed deeply, not as enemy to enemy, but as servant to justice. His voice, when it came, was calm and low, a sound that carried no hatred. The final act was swift, almost gentle. Outside, the wind lifted again, sweeping across the snow like the brushstroke of a painter's hand. When it was done, the Ronin gathered quietly. No one spoke, no one cheered. They washed the blood from their blades in the icy water of the garden pond, the surface rippling like glass. The snow continued to fall, soft, endless, unjudging. Then together they began their walk back through the sleeping city. 47 men moving in perfect silence. Above them, the moon hung low, a pale lantern in the sky. The road glowed faintly with snowlight. The world seemed emptied of sound, only the faint rhythm of their steps, the soft brush of fabric, the whisper of wind through bamboo. They did not feel triumph, only completion. What had begun in sorrow had ended in stillness. At dawn they reached Sengakuji Temple, where their master Asano rested. The sun had not yet risen, the world was bathed in silver grey. they entered the temple grounds and knelt before his grave. From within a wooden box, they placed Kira's head, now cleansed and wrapped, before their lord's tomb. The offering was silent, simple, complete. No prayers were spoken, no words were needed. Each man bowed his head, letting the snow settle on his shoulders, their breaths rising in unison like smoke from incense. The air carried no bitterness, only peace. Their duty was done, their hearts quiet. In the days that followed, the Ronin surrendered themselves to the shogunate. The law required their deaths, but their courage had already softened the judgment of history. The order was given. They would die not by execution, but by seppuku, the death of samurai. When the day came, they faced it calmly, with the same grace that had carried them through that night of snow. One by one they knelt, one by one they bowed. The air was cool, the scent of incense rising like a final breath. There was no fear, only stillness. A stillness that stretched beyond life, beyond time. Centuries later, Edo became Tokyo. The snow still falls each winter. The city no longer remembers the sound of their sandals or the gleam of their swords. But at Sengakuji, the graves of the 47 Ronin remain. People visit and leave incense, flowers and coins, offerings not to warriors, but to silence itself. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear it. The faint hush of snow on stone, the quiet rustle of robes, the heartbeat of loyalty echoing through the centuries. Their story is not one of revenge, but of patience, devotion, and calm. The world they walked through is gone, but their stillness lingers. In the cold wind, in the drifting snow, in the pause between heartbeats. It whispers a simple truth, that even in the darkest nights, there is beauty in silence, peace in purpose, and serenity in the gentle rhythm of time. So as you listen now, let the snow fall softly in your mind. Let the world slow around you. Feel the weight of the air grow light, the hush of winter settle within. You are walking with them, 47 shadows beneath a sleeping sky. And with each breath, you drift a little further into calm, into stillness, into rest. The quiet end of the 47, a whisper through time. When dawn broke over Edo, the snow was still falling, fine, gentle flakes drifting through a pale sky. The city was waking slowly, unaware that something eternal had already been written in its silence. 47 men, their task completed beneath the moonlight, now turned themselves in. Their steps were light, their faces calm, as though the weight of the world had lifted from their shoulders. The air around them was soft, clean, and still. They did not resist, they did not plead. There were no speeches, no anger, no tears. Each of them bowed in quiet respect before the authorities, accepting what was to come. To live as samurai meant to die as samurai, and they understood that more deeply than anyone. The snow gathered on their cloaks as they knelt, melting slowly into the fabric, disappearing without trace, as they soon would. Yet, in that fleeting moment, the peace they carried was immense. The shogunate deliberated. The law was clear, but so was the spirit of their act. The Ronin had broken the rules, yet upheld something far greater, the silent bond of loyalty, the quiet dignity of honor fulfilled. It was decided they would be allowed to die by their own hands. A death of choice, calm and ritual, the final act in a story already complete. And so on a winter morning, they prepared themselves one last time. The temple courtyard was cold and still. Each man wore white robes, the color of purity and release. They sat in neat rows, side by side, like waves upon a frozen sea. Their swords rested before them, polished until they caught the faint glimmer of dawn. The scent of incense hung in the air, warm, faintly sweet, mingling with the smell of snow. One by one they knelt, one by one they bowed. There was no fear in their eyes, only calm. For them, death was not an end but a return, to honor, to silence, to peace. Their movements were steady, their breaths even. When the final act came, it was quiet. So quiet that the sound of wind passing through the temple gardens seemed louder. After it was done, the city did not erupt in noise or mourning. The world did what it always does, it moved on. The Ronin were buried beside their lord, their graves simple, aligned in perfect order. Their names were carved into stone, small and unadorned, just marks in the long rhythm of time. And yet, their silence spoke louder than any monument could. Years passed, centuries slipped by like falling petals. Edo became Tokyo. The snow still fell each winter, blanketing the temple in the same pale hush. Visitors came and went, some to bow, some to whisper prayers, others simply to stand in the stillness and feel the echo of that long-ago night. Their story became legend, but not the loud kind. It was not sung in triumph, nor shouted in battle cries. It drifted quietly through history, like incense smoke curling through a cold morning, like snow melting on stone. The tale of the 47 Ronin was not about vengeance, but about serenity, the grace of men who met fate without anger, who carried duty as gently as they carried breath. Even now, if you walk through Sengakuji Temple when the world is hushed and the wind is kind, you can almost sense them. The faint rustle of robes, the whisper of snow against granite, the steady rhythm of patience lingering in the air. Their presence is not heavy, it soothes, it reminds you that even the sharpest stories in history can end softly, like snow dissolving in morning light. So, close your eyes, let the sound of their stillness wash over you. The noise of the world fades, the air grows calm. You are standing in that courtyard, watching the flakes drift down. Nothing moves quickly here. Time breathes slowly, peacefully, endlessly. And as you drift into sleep, their story drifts with you. Quiet, balanced, eternal. Yoshiwara, the district of lantern light and Edo's night shadows. In the year 1617, under the rule of the Tokugawa shogunate, a district unlike any other began to rise on the quiet edges of Edo. It was surrounded by high earthen walls with a single gate that opened only to the night. When dusk arrived and the last merchants closed their stalls, Yoshiwara awakened. Hundreds of lanterns flickered to life, their golden glow trembling in the mist, painting soft reflections across rain-slicked streets. The air filled with the faint hum of shamisen strings, the laughter of guests, and the perfume of plum blossoms carried on the wind. Yoshiwara was a world apart, a floating city of light and shadow, where rank, class, and sorrow blurred into one gentle haze. Inside its walls, time loosened its grip. Samurai, poets, and merchants wandered the narrow lanes, chasing beauty, conversation, and the illusion of eternity. The lanterns swayed in the night air, their light soft and fragile, as though even the stars bent down to watch. In this hidden city, pleasure and art intertwined so delicately that it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. It was not merely a district of entertainment, it was a theater of dreams. Every sigh, every song, every pour of sake was part of a ritual that celebrated the fleeting nature of joy. Even the silence between laughter held meaning, suspended in the golden glow of candlelight. Outside the walls, the world moved with rules and hierarchy. Inside, Yoshiwara shimmered with another rhythm, gentle, circular, endlessly returning. As snow fell over Edo's rooftops and lanterns glowed like low stars, Yoshiwara became a dream adrift between waking and sleep, a place where hearts could rest, if only for a moment. The grace of the Oiran, queens of the floating world. Within Yoshiwara's winding streets, the air shimmered with music and motion. Behind sliding doors of wood and paper, women were trained not only in beauty but in art, to sing, to dance, to write poetry in delicate calligraphy, and to master the quiet art of conversation. Every gesture mattered. Every movement, from the turn of the wrist to the tilt of the head, was deliberate and calm. Among them walked the Oiran, women of the highest rank, radiant and poised, more symbols of elegance than people of flesh and bone. Their presence was like light moving through silk. Draped in layers of brocade and embroidered kimono, they became living paintings, each step measured and soft. The sound of their wooden clogs echoed faintly against the stone streets, a slow rhythm that drew all eyes toward them. When the Oiran walked through Yoshiwara, the world paused. Crowds gathered quietly at the edges of the lantern glow, not daring to speak too loudly, as if her grace itself demanded silence. Her procession, known as the Oiran Dochu, was not a display of vanity, but of calm control, of beauty in stillness. Her gaze was serene, her smile faint, her perfume lingering long after she passed. She was more than a courtesan. She was the embodiment of an ideal, refinement, intellect, composure. The poets wrote of her in verses, the artists painted her in woodblock prints, and the dreamers carried her image in their hearts long after the night was gone. Yoshiwara may have been a place of illusion, but in that illusion, the Oiran shone like a lantern's flame, fragile, flickering, yet eternal. The rhythm of repetition, nights beneath the lanterns. Behind the beauty and the laughter, Yoshiwara followed a rhythm as predictable as the turning of the seasons. Each morning began the same way. Soft light through paper screens, the faint aroma of incense, and the rustle of silk being folded. The women rose early, combed their hair into perfect shapes, and practiced the same songs, the same dances, the same smiles that the evening would require. As night descended, the lanterns were lit again, their glow spreading across the narrow streets. The guests arrived, merchants, artists, wandering samurai. They were greeted with warmth, laughter, and cups of clear sake. Yet behind every smile was discipline, behind every soft voice, years of training. Each gesture was rehearsed, every laugh just light enough to float. Time in Yoshiwara did not rush, it drifted. One evening melted into another like ink into water. Outside, Edo changed, new rulers, new fashions, new dawns. Inside, everything stayed the same. The music played, the women danced, the same lanterns flickered night after night, casting their golden light on faces both familiar and new. To walk through Yoshiwara was to walk through a dream that never fully ended. The laughter, the fragrance, the rustle of silk, all repeated endlessly, softly, like a lullaby that lulled the city into forgetting. The floating world. Art, born from the night. Over time, Yoshiwara became more than a district. It became a symbol, a heartbeat of Edo's culture. From its narrow streets emerged the aesthetic that would come to define an age. Ukiyo, the floating world. It was a philosophy of transience, the understanding that beauty is not eternal, but precious, precisely because it fades. Artists and poets found endless inspiration there. They painted the glow of lanterns reflected in sake cups, the quiet curve of a woman's smile, the delicate chaos of falling blossoms. Playwrights wrote stories of love and loss. Kabuki actors brought them to life beneath stage lamps, and woodblock artists preserved them in colors that never faded, even as the people who inspired them did.
Yoshiwara became the mirror of Edo's heart, both its dream and its illusion. It was a place of laughter and sorrow, of art made from impermanence. To live there was to float, to surrender to the moment, to understand that all beauty, like smoke or snow, must dissolve.
And so, the spirit of Yoshiwara lived on, not in its walls, which time would erase, but in the art it left behind, in every poem, every brushstroke, every memory that glows like a lantern in the dark. The quiet after the lights fade. When dawn came to Yoshiwara, the lanterns went out one by one. The streets, moments ago alive with sound, fell silent. The music faded, replaced by the soft scrape of brooms on stone, the sigh of wind through the paper doors. The women rested, their painted faces washed clean, their hair unpinned, their voices quiet. The district slept, wrapped in the faint perfume of the night before. Outside the walls, Edo stirred. Merchants opened their shops. Children chased each other through the morning mist. Life continued as always. But inside Yoshiwara, time was slower, softer. The night's illusions melted into memory, and the city of lanterns returned to stillness. Even centuries later, the name Yoshiwara still carries that hush, a dream that glows faintly behind closed eyes. Its stories drift through the years like mist, through narrow alleys, whispering of beauty, of laughter, of nights that burned softly and vanished before dawn. It reminds us that history, like sleep, is not made only of noise and motion, but of quiet moments that linger, shimmering like light across water. The last lanterns of Yoshiwara. As the night begins to fade, one by one, the lanterns of Yoshiwara go out. Their golden light flickers, then softens, melting into the mist like memories dissolving into dawn. The laughter has quieted, the songs have drifted away, and the air, once alive with perfume and melody, grows calm. Only the gentle rhythm of footsteps remains, faint, unhurried, blending with the sigh of the wind that moves through the narrow streets. The city sleeps again, the wooden doors are closed, the silk curtains drawn. Somewhere, a shamisen string hums softly before falling silent. The scent of incense still lingers, warm, faintly sweet, wrapping the air in its final embrace. It is the hour when night and morning share the same breath, when the world feels weightless, floating between waking and dream. In this stillness, Yoshiwara seems to fade into something timeless, not a place, but a feeling. A whisper of light on quiet water, a trace of laughter caught in the folds of memory. The lanterns, the music, the rustling silk, all return to the silence they came from. Yet their warmth remains, like a glow beneath closed eyes, like a dream that refuses to leave. You can almost hear it, the slow hush of air, the distant echo of footsteps, the soft heartbeat of a city that once shimmered with endless night. Everything that was bright now becomes tender. Everything that moved now rests. Let it all drift. Let the streets fade. Let the light dim. The night has finished its song, and the world has nothing left to ask of you. Breathe slowly. Feel the stillness stretch around you, calm and safe. You are part of the quiet now. floating, light, at peace. Sleep comes gently, like the last lantern dimming in the dawn. The world grows soft and you drift, carried by silence into the dream that never ends.